you don't come from money, you got to scrap, right? So you got to figure out ways. You can't just write a check for 4 million rand or 10 million rand to buy a piece of land. You got to figure out how to do it without money, right? I've always funded everything myself. So we spent 3 million rand, which we lost in good Woodstock.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Time just flies, but we've learned so much in that time, and now we have 1,300 units across 3 cities.
And if you had to put the value of all these units together, like,
I would say probably about 1.3 billion or so.
come on now. Murray Clark is the co-founder and CEO of Neighbourgood, one of South Africa's fastest growing property companies reimagining urban living through community-led co-living, hospitality and workspaces. Since launching during the pandemic, Neighbourgood has expanded across South Africa into the United States, transforming underutilized buildings into vibrant neighborhoods. His work sits at the intersection of real estate, entrepreneurship, design and community building. Walk around anywhere in town, you just see, I always go like, I wonder what this building is, and I wonder who owns it. And then next week I see a Neighbourgood sign on it, and I'm like, damn, man.
It's all intentional.
That's amazing. Man. So, yeah.
We're trying to be like 7-Eleven in the 90s. We just got a
amazing.
7-Eleven. Or like Starbucks in the 90s.
Yeah, well, you're doing it already, man. I'm seeing it, man. So thank you so much. Thank you for making time. Murray, where I'd love to start. If you are out at, let's say, a dinner party, and someone asks you, or you're out somewhere and someone who doesn't know who you are, what you do, asks you what you do professionally, what is that sort of answer that you've probably perfected over the last 20 years?
You know what? No one's ever asked me this question, and maybe investors have. We live in a world that is very disconnected, and we spend. When was the last time you checked how long you were online on your phone?
I checked.
Is it okay? It's like 10, 12 hours a day, man. It's a ridiculous thing. And
so true, yeah.
I think when you have the ability to acquire buildings or reposition buildings to create spaces that encourage community and relationships between people and a sense of belonging and warmth and hospitality, that's what we want to do, man. I want to be someone who can take buildings that are physical in nature and give them a new lease of life that can help create just this epic sense of belonging for anyone who uses them, whether it's a really cool home, a workspace, or a third space, a cafe, a retail space, and then hopefully in the process of doing that, run a business that is a lot more sustainable in the world that we live in today. I think we come from business itself is extremely, like the generation before us, is all about EBITDA and about profit. And it's like, how can I be better financially, which is like one aspect of running a business, right? But true. We live in a world now that is demands so much more of us socially as people. What sort of world do we want to leave our kids? And our grandkids, and that's the sort of business we want to run, and that's what Neighbourgood is about. We're not perfect by any manner of means. We're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to be human, and being human is about being imperfect and about learning along the way and being this imperfect human that makes us oddly perfect in our own little way,
100%.
So
you're the most interesting guy at this dinner party right now.
Good. I haven't been to a dinner party in a long time.
Tell me, so if I were to, let's say I put on Apple TV or Netflix and that logo goes to Tugum, and then I'm watching the documentary on the business, and I'm watching, and I imagine it starts with some sort of origin story on you. What would you imagine the beginning of your story? What would be that opening shot?
I think like rewinding all the way back to Durban, where I was born. So 1986 vintage, feels like a heck of a long time ago. And my late dad was a building contractor.
Crazy.
So he was a master builder, and he really had many ups and downs as a businessman. He was a one-man shop who had his bucky that he would pick up guys on the side of the road and take them to work. And so I watched his influence growing up, building buildings, suffering through personal issues like we all do at some point in our lives. He drank too much, he smoked too much. He thought if you're sick, you're going to take a Disprin and the pain will go away. And I had an amazing mom who was extremely loving and caring. And so, yeah, a bit super middle class to the extent that that was who my family was, and grew up with his inspiration. We were really tight before he passed away. He had a heart attack again, didn't look after himself. And that was the end of his life, and really the beginning of mine in the business world, to the extent that when things happen to you like that, you grow up really quickly. I think I was 21 at the time. And I can remember on the Monday going to work after he passed away on the Saturday, and picking up the same guys that he would pick up on the Friday in the same old bucky and driving them to this site in Westville that we had secured a land lease on, to build this old gym. We had rented to a tenant called Curves Gym, and I thought, sure, life has got pretty real pretty quickly. So that was the formative stages of my entry into property. But I've always loved teams and team sports, and the power that you can really achieve in a great team. Talked about yourself and your wife. You guys make an amazing team, and the same for myself and my wife. We both started Neighbourgood with a friend, Sinjin. So yeah, just early days, really. I didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur. You think, geez, are you born with this sort of knack for business? Absolutely not. I think it was just, I think I had the inspiration that my dad left me, and saw what he did wrong and all the struggles he had. And this is really me just trying to finish his journey. and hopefully in a way that's not going to end in a life situation like he did before he passed away.
Righting those wrongs. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
And tell me, how does the name come to you? And what's the first property? Is it a rental? Is it, how does...
When I was 17, I rented an old cricket pavilion, which we used for an under 18 nightclub. That was a big failure.
Oh, crazy.
And at school, I'd run sports clinics and the under 18, so the matric dance party, and I was always the one at the collecting the $20 at the door, to make extra pocket money and whatever it might be. And I'd seen a little bit of what my old man had done, and this thought, let's run a party in the beginning, and convinced the cricket club to rent me this old pavilion next to the side of a field. And this was before social media, so I'd find all the cool kids at all the different schools who would peddle tickets for me. And we started this nightclub called London House. One day I'm going to reopen it, except it won't be an 18 nightclub. It will be a normal nightclub, like a dry bar. And lasted for a few weeks. Made a resounding success at the door. Hired all my mates as bouncers. And until we got shut down by the Durban North moms who didn't want their under 18 daughters coming to this dodgy under 18 nightclub that this guy had started. But then I got left with this building that we needed to do something with, and a rental obligation of, I think it was $3 or $4 grand a month at the time. And so I put an advert in the paper pretty quickly. The classified papers were still a thing at that point. This is 2004 or 5. And we found a tenant who paid us 10 grand a month, and the 7 grand a month difference was essentially pocket money for a 4 or 5 year period. I think I bought my old 1978 cream Mercedes Benz using that money, and that was my entry into property. But it was an incredible, and then the bug really hit.
Wow. So that wasn't even intentional, that just
was by mistake.
Wow.
Proper beginner's luck, eh? But the same, my old man didn't have money, so I think just what that taught me was how you can create value or profit without necessarily having to buy buildings. You can be creative with how you structure deals to grow. And so we would use the same principles, even back then. Like what we found is sports clubs didn't have money. So country clubs were were dying. No one was going there on a Sunday, so you had these clubs that had extra land.
Yes.
And I approached probably like every club in Durban and said, we'll rent land from you. We'll build a building and you'll get 10% of the income, but you must give me a 30-year land lease, and you'll make 10 grand a month. I'll pay for my building in 30 years. At the end of the 30 years, you get the building once it's paid for. And that was how we started off, renting, doing like smart land leases, I guess, at the time, with institutions really, where you didn't have to pay 3 or 4 million rand to buy a piece of land. You could like structure a deal that made sense. And we used the same sort of thing later after my old man had passed away, building shopping centers across South Africa. We built a whole bunch of maybe 30 or 40 convenient shopping centers across South Africa with ShopRite and Boxer and Pick and Pay. And what would happen is, same methodology. When you don't come from money, you got to scrap, right? So you got to figure out ways. You can't just write a check for 4 million rand or 10 million rand to buy a piece of land. You got to figure out how to do it without money, right? And so we would find churches who owned land in the Eastern Cape, and towns were built around churches, so they were often in the best positions, and they had all this extra land, and we would sign a notarial lease over 4,000 or 5,000 square meters in the middle of the Eastern Cape, and we would, off the back of that, sign a lease agreement with Boxer or ShopRite, and we would build a 3,000-4,000 square meter shopping center off the back of land lease structures, which are not really normal. It's not as normal in South Africa, and they're much more recognized in the UK. South Africa is very traditional in how we think about property, and sort of different deal structures and things like that.
Crazy.
But you learn a lot doing these things.
And I'm sure brings in great sort of capital into the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you live and learn. I dropped out of law school in like the first 6 months. So I would have made a terrible lawyer. And I started selling houses, and I'm not like an out and out extrovert. I'm probably somewhere in the middle between an introvert and an extrovert.
Yeah.
So I feel comfortable being around people, but I also don't necessarily get energized by people. But you learn so much in sales, and you learn to read people and understand human emotion, and how to navigate, how to help direct a conversation to a point that makes sense for you and the person, right? Mm-hmm. So we learned so much about, in that first year or two of sales, just understanding people and what they want. Homes are emotional things, and I think starting off as a broker, even though I didn't last very long, because we got slowly into development pretty quickly, it was a really awesome experience. And I'm really super glad I dropped out of university, because the School of Life teaches you a heck of a lot more, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I would never have gone to university again if I had the choice. So I think a lot of people thrive in academia and stuff like that. I don't think I'm one of those people, unfortunately or fortunately. And then slowly but surely started getting into small little property deals, the old nightclub that failed, the gyms we built, 2 residential developments in Durban where we found an old piece of land on the side of a cliff that we bought for 70,000 rand that had zoning for 20 units and handwritten feasibilities that we would build it all ourselves as well. So 70 square meters times 5 grand a square at the time equals the cost. How much can you sell it for? Okay, we can sell it for 10 grand a square. 639,000 less what we paid for it. 400,000 times 20 is the profit. And
but you're just you're in that mindset of let's just flip and make money off of this. You're not thinking building.
No, I was thinking I was thinking, one thing my old man did in part before he passed away was the value of compounded growth in real estate.
Yes.
And that you're using the bank's money essentially to build your own asset base. So I think consciously I was aware of how property essentially makes you money while you're sleeping essentially. And that's what I love about the industry outside of the creative side, which is just as amazing.
Yeah.
We, especially now, the stuff we do with Neighbourgood. So early on, I always knew that it was better to hold assets, but I think that I now, 20 years later, like a mix of both.
Okay.
So I think that some old school property guys live and die by never selling an asset.
Really?
I think I'm a little bit more, I like to recycle stale capital that's in a building where I don't think we can continue to create value anymore. So I think now, so even back then it was maybe half and half. We would hold half and keep half. And that's been sort of the case for, the better part of 15 years. We've traded in and out of assets and continue to invest up. And hopefully the next 20 years, we can hold a lot more than we sell.
Amazing. I can't wait to get into the technicalities of
yeah.
it as well. But tell me, and then the name, how does the name sort of fall into place?
Neighbourgood.
Yeah. Does that happen while you're doing the sort of leasing stuff or not yet?
So my first real estate company was called Royale.
Yeah.
Which was a property development company. Before that, we had run construction companies and fried chicken companies and
crazy.
a whole bunch of things.
Really?
Yeah, man. We had and so building companies, property development companies, and Royale Developments was the retail company, and we built another construction company that built turnkey construction projects across the country. And then Kim and I, who's my wife and co-founder, wanted to move to Cape Town. We hadn't spent any time on holiday, and there was no gap years or anything like that. I know she was at Rhodes and did a journalism degree, and I know she didn't take a year or two off. So Cape Town was that thing for us, both professionally and like a place, to just grow as a couple, newly married couple. And we found a building in Woodstock at the bottom of the Ironworks building called Good Woodstock. And that was the brand. It was called Good. The first version of Neighbourgood was called Good, not Neighbourgood.
Okay.
And it was a failure. We opened a 2,000 square meter food hall, co-work space, wellness space, bar in 2019. And it was all about supporting local and just a collection of amazing brands that we put together. And it was epic in terms of what it looked and felt like. We made magic out of an old basement, which should never have looked as cool as it was. But the team did a really amazing job, and we put together an awesome team. But we got caught 6 months later in the middle of a messy liquidation that the landlord was involved with.
Oh, shit.
And their investors pulled the lease agreement that he had with us. And so we were forced to shut down within like 8 months of opening. So we lost.
And did you fund that predominantly yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I funded all of it. I've always funded everything myself. We've only last year did we first take investment on for Neighbourgood itself.
Okay.
So we spent 3 million rand, which we lost in Good Woodstock. And Good Woodstock, and we were going to open other goods. We were in the UK looking for sites. There were lots of big department stores shutting down, like Debenhams, and it was just when like online retail was just taking over everything, and everyone was like mass exodus of retail globally, big shopping centers that were shutting down and stuff. And we felt what we had created which was this like hybrid collection of sustainable small format foodies and workspaces, in-person experiences, was an answer to the physical space problem, because there was a lot of dead physical space globally. And one way or another, there's been truth to that, because from that failure, we evolved Good into Neighbourgood. And the evolution of our thinking for Good extended from thinking about how we consume space within the four walls of a building to how we consume space across cities and neighborhoods. So naturally, from Good to Neighbourgood made logical sense in terms of the evolution of the brand, because we don't necessarily think about how we consume space within the four walls of a building. Our product is a connected city product. So if you live and work with us across any of our buildings, you have access to the whole city. Okay. And you've got, you can use any of the buildings. There's 40 or 50 of them in Cape Town. and there's events and programming, and there's a community of 4,000 or 5,000 people, and
Wow.
there's something happening every day, like walks up Table Mountain or First Thursdays, and so if you're a single guy, girl, or just someone who's moving to the city, it's an amazing platform to be able to meet new people without having to go, searching for introductions or swiping left on, whatever you need to do to try and find your next relationship. So
what do you think was the biggest lesson on that?
I think the biggest lesson was, there were a couple lessons. Number one, the area was challenged. So Woodstock in 2019, we thought was gentrifying more than it was. And so we were from Durban, so we didn't know Cape Town well. We just thought, okay, this is big, beautiful building in Woodstock in a smart structured deal. We needed an entry point into Cape Town. And so in hindsight, had we built the concept again, I probably would have either done it in the city or Sea Point or Green Point or somewhere else, or Gardens, because I think naturally it would have been safer. No one would come as much for dinner at night because of social issues. So that was quite difficult for us. It only really pumped at lunch because there were a lot of people working. So, and it wasn't walkable. So you couldn't walk out at night and sort of cruise around because there were safety issues. So we had security problems that we needed to take care of. So that was a big lesson. It's just not knowing the context of the city when you enter it, from coming from an outsider. And I was an outsider at the time. And then the business was too complicated. It had too many layers. So it had a food hall with multiple smaller foodies, all amazing, that did reasonably well while they were there. A co-work space, a bar, a coffee shop, and a wellness space. All 5 of those layers needed a dedicated manager because they were different businesses, So,
100%.
And you didn't have the scale and the revenue to support a complicated business like that, and each GM had a salary and stuff like that. So it needed far less. It needed to be way more simple, which is what we've done with Neighbourgood. We're focusing on living and working spaces rather than 5 or 6 different layers. And then we own a lot more of our buildings now as well, so we control the outcome of the experience. If we want to design something and implement it, we can. Although we do operate buildings still, so we manage buildings as well. I think that was a head lease, which was quite complicated, and I probably should have foreseen what could have happened in the event of a liquidation like that. But you live and learn, dude.
Well done for continuing. I mean, it's a world in which you look at that and you're like, not for us.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Amazing that you guys were just like, okay.
Yeah, you got to carry on.
Carry on.
Neighbourgood has 3 words in it. How you treat your neighbor. So we live in a world again where the likelihood of you knowing your neighbor is probably not very high. And so how do you actually treat your neighbor in this world? That word good, and what does it mean to the way we live? How you run your business, how you treat your family, how you treat yourself, your wife, like what does that word good actually mean to the way you live? And the impact that you make across neighborhoods. So how you treat your neighborhood, that word good, and how you just live it, and the impact that you leave in this world. Hopefully, and we talk about it, like just leaving people neighborhoods better than you find them, just like the interaction with us. Am I leaving you with good energy when I leave, or am I like bringing you down, and people have the power to lift you up. People and spaces actually have the power to either lift you up or bring you down. And I try and make a conscious decision all the time to make sure that I'm leaving people better than we find them. And that's what I want the company to do as well, whether it's buildings or interactions with human beings.
When you think about a project or a building, is there one that comes to mind that's like was either the most challenging or one that was a big pivot moment, or was there one that would that be one of them? Or?
I would say a pivotal moment for us, from a small developer into a slightly bigger developer, which has the ability to transform larger buildings. Because we had built a lot of bigger convenient shopping centers in my previous life. But when you enter Cape Town, and it's a different world, you know, I think coming from building ShopRites and boxes and townships, the mechanism to build at scale is easier because you're essentially building supermarkets. Whereas here, we didn't have the capital to go and buy 100 million rand building, you know. And so I think timing worked in our favor because COVID happened, and Good Woodstock was a failure in 2019, and I had time and energy in my hands because now what was the next step? I was still running a building company, so I had the luxury of a retainer that I was still earning, thank goodness, at the time. But the timing of COVID meant that we could buy buildings that were empty because hospitality came to a stop in March of 2020, right? So towards the end of that year, we put in an offer to buy the old Townhouse Hotel, which is down the road from here. And you would never ordinarily be able to acquire a building like that in the way that we did, which was like a structured vendor loan deal where the owner wanted to exit and we didn't have enough capital to buy it, but we could convince the bank to give us 39 million rand of the 65 we needed. And the owner was kind enough to leave 25 million rand in the deal, which was the equity we needed to fund the transaction at the time. And then we got an investor to stick in 7 million rand to revamp the ground floor and the first floor. And we turned it from what was a hotel at that time to a co-living space of 107 units. We signed 107 lease agreements as part of the pre-disbursement conditions with the bank. They needed to see revenue because it was empty. So, and you obviously need cash flow to buy a building. Otherwise you can't support the bond. So everything sort of worked together at the right time.
Wow.
The seller was prepared to give us a chance or back the jockey, so to speak. And they would, who were we to them? You know, we just built a relationship with a really good family who owned the Vineyard Hotel and Odevaf in Stellenbosch, and they gave us a chance when they really shouldn't have. You know, I mean, it's like, so that was a massive win for us. And just the process of converting that from a hotel to a hybrid residential space in the middle of COVID, like in 2021, was just an incredible experience. We're now going to redevelop it again into 107, so 140 odd apartments. And
you're not worried in that moment of like, does everything go back to normal? Like, what if this is the new norm and we're taking on such a massive
I think
project?
At the time I knew that you can outsource a heck of a lot in this world, and now even more with AI. But everyone needs a home. So residential is like probably the safest place to be in as an asset class because you can't get away from it. We need the roof over the heads that we sleep. So it's always been a really defensive asset class. Although we run hybrid hotels now, then we didn't. We were running hard co-living 6 to 12 month lease agreements for people who needed, you know, and we converted restaurants that were on site to common kitchens. I mean, if you go down the road and you see the kitchens, there's like 8 or 9 like MasterChef style kitchens that we've created with cool common areas. So it was Cape Town's, I would say, first real co-living space of 107 units that for 2 years in that form that we had delivered it did exceptionally well, you know. And then we started slowly introducing short-term rentals back at a point of time, and Cape Town obviously has such a big hospitality market, so it felt like logical at the time to start slowly bringing short-term rentals back. And my goodness, then you got to learn a whole new industry. I'm not a hotelier. I don't come from a hospitality background, although I value what hospitality means and how you can lead people better than you find them, and the gift of hospitality, you know, which to me is such a precious thing that I've learned. And so we learned so many lessons, and we continue to learn so many lessons along the way. We turned 6 in July.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Time just flies, but we've learned so much in that time. And you know, now we have 1,300 units across 3 cities: San Francisco, Cape Town, and New Haven. We're entering Chicago really soon with an amazing guy that is heading up growth for us in the US, and just super excited about what the future looks like.
How many staff
We have about 350 odd people in the city, and it sounds like a vanity number. Remember, we're in the hospitality game, so our buildings are filled with good people that run our buildings in the city. At head office, we have about 40 odd people across finance, ops, res, and the people side of it is completely new to me as well. I think when you're the CEO of a company, there's one thing like when you're in a small like asset management team or your own company, and then there's another thing when you've got to make sure on the 25th of the month everyone is being paid on time, and payroll and all of these things. You become a grown-up pretty quickly. So I've learned on the job also, as a leader, like evolving from a one-man shop or a smaller company into a much bigger company. You learn. You move from this small do-it-yourself sort of company into this adolescent type style company where you're still figuring things out, but you also require process, and it's a different company that we're running now than it was 3 years ago. And there's a leadership team and a management team, and there's things like KPIs and SOPs and all of these things you've got to make sure that are implemented, and onboarding processes. And so it's been a learning curve for me that every day I'm still figuring out.
And if you had to put the value of all these units together, like,
I would say, probably about 1.3 billion or so.
Come on now, what are we saying? Wow, that's
but I mean,
incredible.
it's not really.
No, of course.
It's not for us like the reason why we do it at all, man.
No, Murray, it's for us. It's for us. We're listening. Are you listening, guys? 1.3 billion.
Yeah. You know what would be better if it was in USD?
Yeah, it's okay. It's coming. How was that transition? How does the first international, and how does that even happen?
We've always felt like that we've created a version of something that I think we could put anywhere in the world. And I still think that Cape Town, we still have so much work to do. We're working on an amazing tech stack that will close the loop for the customer, access control, local area discounts. We are rebranding all of our cafes to Neighbourgood. We set up a different food and beverage brand called Nice. I actually don't think anyone knows that. So it's the third space strategy for us has been really important. And so that you can come and just chill in our cafes. You don't have to live and work with us. You can just appreciate like good coffee and good smiles and good energy. And so I think for us, the layers of our business, beautiful third spaces, amazing living spaces, working spaces, community experiences, delivered within a city using a density product. So 40, 50 buildings in a city, not trying to be a Marriott where you have one hotel in a city. How do you build 40 or 50, connect the dots, create a community of thousands of people, take that and put it in Miami, Chicago, Melbourne, wherever it might be. So the ambition to do that was always there from day one. But to build an MVP in the bricks and sticks game is different to building a tech business. So we use tech to make us more efficient, but our actual product is in-person experiences, homes, workspaces, and buildings that you experience. So the process of building an MVP is a lot harder than switching on the lights for a tech product, because you've got to buy buildings and you've got to like design real world experiences.
Real people in there. It's like it's not so much on the line.
And that's what I love about it as well, to be honest, because it's hard. You've got to you think about you design a product. How I think about product is how do we design a consumer product across an entire city? So on a piece of paper, design Neighbourgood across the city of Cape Town. Where are we now? Where are we going to take it? What areas need cafes? What areas need workspaces? And you design the product before it exists. That's what we did in the beginning. It's what is this going to look like in 4 or 5 years time? And then you slowly execute against that strategy. So now we're 80% of the way there in Cape Town. And I think we've got so much room for growth. I think we'll get to 10,000 units in the city, and a lot more weighting towards long-term rentals, which is where we want to be. Less hotels, more fun, branded living and working spaces. How do we take that and then open it in San Francisco? Man, it's as simple as hitting people up on LinkedIn.
Wow.
and like rashing people and singing, getting on Zoom calls and like sending 300 emails and getting no responses, and like sending another 300 emails and getting one response, and eventually you get a phone call and you hear like, look what we've done in Cape Town. This is the product. We're singing the gospel of the Neighbourgood product, and eventually you get lucky, and that's what happened to us. We remember, so we're a property manager, so we don't have to own everything. As long as you've got 300-400 units in a city, we can work with you. So if you own or manage 300-400 units and you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, or wherever it might be, we can use Neighbourgood as a platform and lay it on top of your buildings. So that's what we did when we entered San Francisco. We have 4 or 5 owners that own multiple different buildings. We are nowhere close to where we should be. We still have to open workspaces and cool work clubs and cafes, and we like just at the beginning of where I'd like to see us go in the US. We've got good teams on the ground. We're in 2 cities, so we're like just out there, so we have so much work that we need to do, but you do it off the shoulders of amazing people. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't have incredible people, it's going to amount to zero, right?
Yeah.
So we're just trying to make sure that we live and learn from the mistakes that we've made, entering new cities, what we need to do right to accelerate the trajectory of getting Neighbourgood to the point that it is in Cape Town, which is more density, more brand recognition, more community participation. Like, you mentioned like you seeing the brand in Cape Town. It's like very intentional, being close knit. So that it's like we talk about like going deeper in a smaller area. It's a much simpler business to run when you have 30. I can put you in a car and take you to all our buildings in an hour, and I'll get you through all 30.
Wow.
So it's a much easier business to run. And the same for when we enter new cities. Like, how do you build that customer journey in New Haven, which is around Yale University? How do you connect 50, 60, 100 buildings, reverse 3 or 4 work clubs into that, build an epic community team that has amazing programming? Like, how do you collaborate with cool, sustainable, small brands? It's not, because it's not just the Neighbourgood thing. It's a we want to lift everyone up in the process. So like, if we can find amazing people to collaborate with, we will always do that. It doesn't matter whether you are running a yoga shop or if you've got a cool like brand or something like that. Like, we want to sort of bring you into the mix as much as we can and help create a platform for your brand to do well. And yeah, I think from the beginning, we've also been quite intentional about that. Is like, how do we lift everyone else up in the process? South Africa, man, we've got like a scarcity mindset. We think about business, and we often like don't want to share with other people because we think someone's going to steal our idea.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And it's not, man. So much of it is in the execution anyway. So I can give you the best idea to anything, and if you can't execute, it doesn't make a difference. So
100%.
I never sign non-disclosure agreements because or I never make people sign NDAs because I'm like, if you want to try and run this business, you're welcome to. It's not that easy, So 100%. My feeling is like, rising tide, let's lift everyone else up if we can, and try and share freely about deal structures and learnings and what to do and what not to do, because who knows, where's the 19-year-old girl from wherever it might be in South Africa, or maybe not South Africa, who doesn't have the dad that I had who helped me a little bit. Maybe they can hear something online that helps them take their first step into running their first failed under 18 nightclub.
Exactly. It's so inspiring, man. So amazing to hear how you've done that, and just to like tackle the US, and it's maybe sometimes as simple as jumping on LinkedIn. That's like,
it is,
that's
dude.
So
people overcomplicate it. They're like, strategically we're gonna go do this or that.
You need to buy one unit where like you go in, you find the right people, and you've got the framework, and you've got something that's is valuable, and
for sure,
and you've sort of polished over the last 20 years.
Yeah,
and it's like, let's implement it there, and you're seeing results, and that's so inspiring, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Couple more questions, bud, before we wrap up.
Yes.
How do you feel about the Nomads? Do you think they're making Cape Town better?
I do and I don't. So I think that there is tremendous amount of accommodation shortage for locals, and the price of renting in Cape Town is ridiculous. So like, and even in our buildings, it's expensive. So like, I'll say that much. I think, and it's part of the reason we want to focus on long-term rental accommodation, because the need to provide accommodation in the city is critical. I'll give an example. We have 418 units opening at Golden Acre. We are the appointed managers for a building that we are launching in September. And 2 TikTok posts, we had 1,000 applications for 10.5. I mean, we haven't even started the marketing process. So that shows you where the demand is. I'm not saying there's no demand for short-term rentals. I'm just showing you how much demand there is for long-term rentals.
Wow.
And that's at 10.5 grand a month, which is too expensive for 90% of the population. So I think the reality is that where Nomads add value to the city is that there's a huge amount of spend in tourism. The best cultures are a mix of both locals and international people. Yeah. And there's a world where they should live together in harmony. The problem is if rental accommodation is being, and I'm not 100% sure that Nomads are necessarily zapping all the rental accommodation, but I'm sure that the fact that like they can afford to pay 20 grand a month instead of 10 grand a month means that some local person who would ordinarily maybe get it for 15 now can't get it for 15 because it's priced at 20 to 25 during season. And you only need to look at how little Property 24 ads or rentals there are during summer in Cape Town to understand how much pressure there is in the city. And that's not just in Sea Point, that's like the city everywhere. Like there's 25, 30,000 Airbnb listings, but there'll be like 500 rentals on Prop 24, which is a problem. So that's a supply problem. I think that there's space to solve that, which we're excited to be part of. And that's building a long-term rental accommodation that's designed for locals, at a price point that makes sense, partnering with Old Mutual or, big institutions who have an ESG mandate to support more affordable accommodation. It's not like necessarily driven by private equity, which really it runs on a 2 or 3 year life cycle at like IRRs of 25%. If a big institution like Old Mutual openly, I mean, if you can hit 15% or something like that, the guys are comfortable that. Whereas it's hard. Cape Town is run by a lot of big fish in a small pond, and they're all chasing best and highest value. And best and highest value in the city is a sectional title exit at 70,000 Rand a square, which you can't produce rental housing at. So you can buy an apartment for a studio for 1.8 million Rand, but then you must rent it for 20 grand a month to get a return. So that's the problem that we've got, is that the cost of what people are willing to pay for a studio, 1-bedroom apartment is too much for what the bulk of the population can afford. And until that changes, there's going to be this push and pull friction between locals and nomads. And it's unfortunate because, again, I think the best is a world where both live. And every big international city's got the same problem. It's not unique to South Africa.
And
Cape Town.
Who better than you, man? You've got
I'm going to try my best.
I mean, I can imagine how cool those spaces will be, and bringing that
they're going to be so cool
ethos of what you're building into that
combination. For sure.
Amazing. But tell me, if we're getting into the really important questions, right? If you, let's say tomorrow, we take everything away, every single unit, we take away every single even the buildings you're managing. There's no assets. There's nothing. Everything's gone. It's yourself, your wife, your other partner. You've got all the knowledge you have.
Yes.
How do you tackle it tomorrow? What's the first thing you guys do?
I would start a property management company. And I would apply what I know already to vacant buildings across the world. I think I love real estate when there are problems to solve. So when you've got big, tired buildings that need a new lease of life, where you can think about designing a product across buildings, neighborhoods, and cities. So I'd start by designing the product that I want to build and the brand that I want to build. Let's assume that I was just going to do Neighbourgood 2.0, which I really think is the future of how we should live and work in cities. I think that there is the space in the real estate world that we're in to create modern, relevant real estate companies that are a lot more enduring and a lot more sustainable than traditional developers and property people who operate from silo to silo. So property people build a project and they move on, and then they forget about the project. I think about real estate with a connective tissue in mind. So what does it mean when you weave the golden needle through every single building? And how do you create compounded growth, which we all know in real estate, to the guest experience? And how do you rethink about how we consume space in a lot more interesting, sustainable, collaborative ways that are relevant in the world that we live in, that combines amazing technology, beautiful in-person people experiences, relevant design, and all of these like sustainable, interesting principles in a way that can be delivered in 2026. So I think I would still start a property management company that invests smartly into propco deals like we do now, where you can be opportunistically acquire buildings that through the lens of a neighborhood have a different value to it than through the lens of the seller. So we've bought buildings where people are like, you've paid too much for that building, but not through the lens of neighborhood, because I know that what we can do in our model. So I think having a unique model like neighborhood helps you see things differently. It doesn't have to be neighborhood. It could be self-storage. It could be Airbnb rentals. It could be some form of real estate niche that is unique. And I would advise anyone who is starting their career to pick a niche, not to be a generalist, because I think that when you focus on one thing, you become an expert at that thing. And I think that when you treat real estate as a business, which is how I do, you have to become an operator. And you can't be an operator of multiple things. I can't be as good as self-storage. When I stopped building convenient shopping centers, the reason why I stopped it, so I asked myself one thing: can I be the best in the world at building this thing? And I looked in the mirror and I said, no. There are people out there in this country that are better shopping center builders than me. What do you need to be the best shopping center builder? Much bigger balance sheet. You need to be able to write check. I knew that as creative as I was, I couldn't compete with the best in the world, and I didn't creatively have the fire to build shopping centers. And if you don't wake up and love what you do every day, you're not going to be the... I knew when I started Woodstock, which failed, that even if it failed, I would choose to continue because I love the creative side of it so much that I was prepared to lose 3 million rand to start Neighbourgood, to open 1,300 units 5 years later. You know what I'm saying? Brilliant. So I knew before we started that if we failed, I would carry on, because I think the process of reimagining physical space and cities and how we consume space across a city is so creative and so fun, combined with like the people side of the business. For me, was always going to be like the thing that I do forever, you know. So that's been the most rewarding part of it. And I would start it all over again. If I had no buildings, I would do it exactly the same. But I will say that for people who are looking to get into the real estate space, is to pick that. There's like specific niches, co-living, again, self-storage, maybe dark kitchens. There's like cold storage. In the US, there's like caravan parks and RV parks and like medical and I think wellness is just going to get bigger and bigger in the physical space as well. So I think there's that space to like pick that niche and be the best at that category, because I think that's ultimately what separates people who become masters of their class, of their asset class, versus just generalists where you like do a bit of this or a bit of that. Just opportunity. You got to run it like a business. Yeah. And
brilliant advice, man.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Any advice for someone who is buying their first unit? You're someone who's bought many different types of buildings and
Yep.
apartments and houses. Like, what do people look for?
I thrive off mindlessly going through Property 24 at late at night when everyone is asleep. And it's terrible. And it's not just Prop 24. I'll go in like deep, dark holes, bro, all over the world. Like I'll go on Zillow and like
really
fucking Chicago or like into a specific neighborhood, and then I'll like 300 listings later, my mind is about to burst. I'm like, okay, what are the calculations, the rate per square foot, this and that. So I think like I test a lot of, I like go deep into a market and then understand each subset, how much the rate per square foot or square meter is, to understand the maths behind everything. And then I walk as many deals as I can. So if I'm looking, I'll try and look at 100 deals just to understand the market, because I think that's critical. Often people are like, okay, it's time to buy now, but how many buildings have you actually seen? So like, how many deals have you underwritten to buy that one building? How many have you seen? You know, how many adverts have you gone through? So I'm not talking about procrastinating before you buy. I'm just talking about understanding the market. And then you know, the old saying, you make your money when you buy, is 100% true. You're talking about the stuff that you guys have bought as a family in Bree Street and, you know, little apartments. Like if you're buying at the right price, it's about finding that one buyer at that time who needs to sell for a specific reason. And you can buy it for 500 grand less than it's worth. Because, you know, ultimately, if you then renovate it, you're moving not just the value, 500 grand, you're moving at R1 million, and there's your intrinsic capital value. So I would spend a heck of a lot of time learning. And if you're in Cape Town or Josie, Durban, try and find that diamond in the rough that even if you put in 30 offers and maybe they accept one, don't be in a rush to just buy something, because when you're buying a home or a property, you're not going to buy, unless you're in the professional real estate space, you're not buying 20 of these things a year. And maybe for some lucky people, they can do that if it becomes a real thing. But take the time to make sure you put offers in at under asking price, so that you have a chance of hopefully creating value when you buy. If that's the objective. A home is a different thing. Home is an emotional thing. I bought a home recently. It's the first building I've ever paid full value for something. And I'm like, fuck it. Like, drove me insane. But I was like, I don't know what to do. Everything in Newlands is so expensive, and it's like selling within 24 hours. It like goes against my grain to pay full price for anything. But unfortunately, I had to do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a home. So yeah, I think it's that emotional thing where you spend time and you're investing in the quality of your home. Definitely. And your in lived experience, whereas an investment is a different thing. It's about the maths.
Any advice in terms of, you know, let's say if you don't have any properties and you're trying to finance from the bank, as well as if you've got one or two, like, is there some sort of things you've learned along the way that maybe how do you first like revalue your apartments or properties before you go get new financing? Any sort of things you've learned along the way that you can share?
You know, I think I've always felt like having a secondary business that generates cash flow that you can use to invest into properties is the best. And that secondary business can be a property business. Yeah. But I like the idea of a side hustle or a salary where you can like consciously take X amount a month and pay down debt on the other side. Yeah. I like the idea for people starting in property of actually running Airbnbs themselves and maybe doing 4 or 5 for other people for a fee, and taking that cash flow and paying down their own debt. Yeah. I think that property management or sales is an amazing place to start as a commission earner, whether it's in residential or commercial, because you just learn the game far faster. You learn the value of buildings. You learn how to deal with people. And on the hospitality side, if you start a property management company, whether it's Airbnb or just traditional Resi or whatever it might be, again, you're learning on the job. You're getting to see deals that you ordinarily wouldn't see. You're building a business that's generating cash flow that, again, you can use to pay down debt. So I do like the idea of being an operator. I think that you either need to make the decision to be a passive investor or an active investor. And if you're passive, you're seeing property as a retirement, and it's your thing that you're paying off over many years. If you are actively investing in property and this is your gig, then you've got to be in the game. And then you need to be like after work, if you're working for a full-time job, then 3 or 4 hours in the evening, like chasing deals, finding a group of investors that will come in with you, being the GP on the deal, which means that let's say you do 5 deals, you carve out a 25% share in each deal. Yeah, so I think I think that at the end of the day, there are investors who will back jockeys like you and I, as long as the deal mechanics work and the investment return makes sense. So if you're house flipping and you can buy a home for R1 million and sell it for 1.7 million rand, if you, let's say you're not a salaried earner, you don't have to necessarily get the bond yourself. As long as you find the deal of the right value, you can convince someone who's earning enough to get a bond for R1 million to come in with you for a 50% share, and you can pay them whatever 11-12% on the equity that they invest in the project, and they get 50% of the profits.
Very clever.
So let's assume it's a 2 million rand deal, and you can sell it for 3 million rand. And someone can, so you bought it at the right price, but you don't have the money to pay for it. But you find someone who's got a credit rating who can bond it, and maybe they've got 200 grand for the deposit. So you come in with them 50-50, you put it into a company, you pay them 10 to 11% on the 200,000 or 300,000 rand that they've invested plus the bond, or whatever. Let's assume you need another 300,000 or 400,000 rand. They stick that in, they get a return on that cash, and they get 50% of the upside. So you sell it for 3 to 3.5. There's a 750,000 rand profit. They get a return on the cash they've invested and 50% of the profit. You both walk away with 350,000 rand each, and a waterfall return for the investor. He gets the first 11%, whatever the number is, plus a profit. So you only have to be, your skill needs to be your ability to find and execute on value. That's where the skill of a real estate person, because then you become a jockey like me, and people then back you to invest in deals, and 1 million rand deal becomes 5 million rand deal becomes 10 million rand deal, and everything is relative. So now I'm like, people will be like, well, how are you doing big deals? That's the same thing I'm thinking of in the guys doing in the US who are doing deals 20 times the size or 50 times the size. They think I'm this like small boy in Cape Town. It's like everything is about perspective, and the stuff that I see in the US, which is where we're trying to chase now compared to where we are now. I like incremental progress, so like proving yourself along the way. So I understand it's necessary to put one foot in front of each other before you can learn to run. But that process of moving from a 1 million rand deal to a 10 million rand deal can happen very fast if you can grasp the process of value creation in repositioning assets. It can happen. You've done it once in Bree Street. I promise you can do it on a 100 million rand building as well. The same principles apply, and it takes the same amount of time.
Absolutely. No, and that's great advice with like people, and they can finance a portion, and that's really, really great thinking. Have you watched that series that We Work?
Yes.
Chaos. You're much better suited founder, man.
I don't drink tequila and I don't have a jet.
Not yet.
I fly coach on Mango.
You get the what's that emergency exit?
Yeah, exactly.
My last question to you. Is there an area in Cape Town, let's say, or Johannesburg or Durban that comes to mind that you're like, listen, guys, if you were to invest here, I think in the next 10 years, this area is going to go crazy. Just like sort of predictions.
Yeah, I think Josie's cheap at the moment. I think the right areas of Josie, like suburbs and Rosebank, and Josie lost favor big time because of political instability and infrastructure problems. So it's underpriced at the moment. I think that the right homes will return to value at some point. And obviously, touch wood, the infrastructure problem and political issues can solve themselves eventually as well. But I think that there's real value in Johannesburg at the moment in offices, in big houses that are selling for less than replacement costs by a long margin. And there's a lot of empty buildings in Josie that I think can be repositioned to create like really cool, interesting modern workspaces, living spaces. So I would say Joburg offers a lot more value than Cape Town at the moment. Cape Town is expensive, dude. It's hard to find value here. You've got to trawl deals with Liquidators. We recently acquired a deal last week at a number that was 50% of replacement cost, but it wouldn't be in the open market. So finding value here is more about relationships, less about, because there is no value in CEPA. Like, you got to find the needle in the haystack, an off-market deal, because anyone who knows anything about property can just sell it for a stupid number now.
Yeah.
And that will end at some point, because you can't just continue on this J curve that's never ending at 200,000 Rand a square meter. And we've been on a good ride for like the last 4 years.
Yeah.
But I think Josie's where I would be more, unless, again, like if you can deal with liquidators or people who just great relationship with brokers where they know you can close fast, because that's the key. Is like the broker is the gatekeeper to good deals or relationships that you've got that lead you to deals that are off market. Because anything that's sitting on Prop 24 is going, no one's getting the R1 million bachelor flat on that they're buying in Sea Point on Prop 24.
Yeah.
They're buying it through an estate that's gone into liquidation or something like that.
Where would you find that information? Where's the best place?
Lawyers, the people who actually manage estates and liquidation. So there's like specific people out there that are mandated to solve liquidation issues.
Yeah.
I have very limited exposure to it, other than this deal that we've just bought. I bought 2 buildings on liquidation. A flat that we had, which is a private flat that my wife owns in Greenpoint, which was a steal at $1 million maybe 5 years ago. And then now it's worth maybe 2.5, and we spent like maybe 500 grand on it. So it's like R1 million in value there, and it does 25 grand a month or a sort of revenue. And then this building in Loop Street is and we were competing against 4 or 5 other developers, but I'm 100% sure that our partner in the deal got the deal because of the relationship he's got with the liquidator.
Wow.
Not because I think he's a good oak, and people like him, and so people give him deals. Yeah. 100%. People do business with people they like and they trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's much easier like helping people when they're good people.
100%.
And I think that's why our partner in the deal got the deal.
Amazing.
The deal.
Amazing. My last question to you, how would you like to be remembered?
Man, for enduring good and like the impact that Neighbourgood has had, not just in the physical world, but through its values and through the application of its values, has had on business and people across the world. So like, again, like, how do we live life through good as a lens? How do we leave people better than we find them? Like, how do we just bring joy and love to people, and just be open and honest about wins and failures along the way? I think that like gift of hospitality, where you can leave people better than you find them, is just something that I think is a unique thing, and I want to be remembered to freely be able to do that. Hopefully in many, many years to come. For my little 3-year-old son, we have another boy on the way, and that's what I want their dad to be remembered for: loving and leaving people better than I found them.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it so much,
Thank you for
dude.
making time, and like truly appreciate it. Just to give you your flowers, man. I love that you're like always on social media, just giving away as much free game as possible. And it's like, I mean, you even touched on it where people are like so worried that their ideas is the thing that's keeping them sort of ahead, where you're like, what we do is not that easy to do. So I love that you're always sharing and just that, you know, you could just be another founder who's just like, we know nothing about, and he's just building this empire. But I can see it matters to you to share. Really did, it's like a part of your ethos and your community. So a big shout out to you.
Thank you, my boy. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Amazing. What a great chat. Thank you so much. That was special, man.
Thanks, dude.
Thanks.